When my daughter jumped from the 18th floor, she was still clutching a silver necklace tightly in her hand. Until her very last breath, she was waiting for her father to save her. But Harvey, the famous high-profile defense attorney, didn't fight for her. When she was being assaulted, he declined her FaceTime calls. And when I went to the police, he accused me and our daughter of being dramatic liars. Then the horrific leaked videos of the assault went viral on TikTok and Snapchat. The cyberbullying pushed her over the edge. She cried and asked me, "Mom, does Dad not love me anymore?" I couldn't answer her. She didn't know that her father had checked out of our marriage long ago for a younger woman. But I was done trying to save a toxic marriage. My only goal now was to drag everyone who hurt my baby girl straight to hell. My daughter, Olivia, was in the ER. When the doctor handed me the medical report, his voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper. She has been severely assaulted. She needs immediate physical and psychiatric care. In that second, my brain went completely numb. The world around me faded into a dull buzz. In the hospital room, Olivia was curled up in the corner of the bed. She was shivering under the thin blanket. Her exposed wrists and neck were covered in dark purple bruises. Every time a footstep echoed in the hallway, she flinched violently, her eyes filled with pure terror. The rage inside my chest boiled over. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and ran out of the hospital. 30 minutes later, I slammed open the doors of Harvey's law firm. He was in the middle of a partners meeting. Every eye in the conference room locked onto me. Harvey put down his fountain pen, his brows furrowing into a deep, irritated scowl. "Sarah, whatever this is, we'll talk about it at home." I ignored the stares of his colleagues and walked straight up to him. "Olivia called you last night. Multiple times. Why didn't you pick up?" The room fell dead silent. Harvey waved his hand, signaling his team to leave the room. The moment the heavy glass door clicked shut, his voice dropped. "Are you seriously doing this right now? This is my firm, Sarah. Not a place for you to throw tantrums." I stared into his cold eyes, speaking through my teeth. "Answer me. When Olivia called you last night, screaming for help, why did you decline her call?" Harvey's remaining patience completely evaporated. "I was working on a multi-million-dollar merger." "You stormed into my office just because of a missed call?" I let out a dry, bitter laugh, my eyes burning with tears. "She was attacked last night, Harvey. She called you because she was begging her father to save her. Did you even care?" His expression froze for a fraction of a second, but he quickly regained his icy composure. "Did you call the police?" I stared at him, stunned. He continued smoothly, "If a crime was committed, let the police handle it. Coming to my office and screaming at me serves absolutely no purpose." I grabbed his expensive collar, my tears finally spilling over. "She is your daughter. When she was at her absolute worst, you were the first person she thought of. And you couldn't even bother to slide to answer." Harvey calmly but firmly pushed my hands away, his voice turning freezing cold. "Sarah, pull yourself together. Adults solve problems with legal procedures, not emotions. Now stop disrupting my work." Those cold, clinical words completely extinguished the last spark of hope in my heart. Years ago, to help me win a lawsuit, he had changed his entire career path and went to law school. Back then, he swore he would never let anyone hurt me again. But now, when his own daughter needed his protection, he couldn't even spare a single word of comfort. Harvey checked his Rolex. "If that's all, I have a client waiting." I looked at this man, someone who used to be my husband, but now felt like a total stranger. Suddenly, I had nothing left to say. I turned and walked away. It was evening by the time I got back to the hospital. The second I pushed the door open, Olivia startled awake from her nightmare. She looked at the doorway in absolute horror, her body tense and ready to hide. Only when she realized it was me did she slowly relax. In the next second, she threw herself into my arms, sobbing so hard her entire body shook. "Mom, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces." I held her tight, my own tears soaking her hospital gown. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Nobody is ever going to hurt you again." But as soon as the words left my mouth, she screamed as if she had been shocked. "No, they will." She scrambled back to the corner of the bed, covering her ears. They said they wouldn't let me go. There were so many of them. "Mom, you can't beat them. They have too much power." I pulled her back into my arms, gently stroking her back until her shaking slowly subsided. After a long silence, she reached out and took my hand. "Mom, please don't tell Dad." I froze. "Why?" She kept her head down, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want him to think I'm a bad girl." Her words felt like a physical knife twisting in my chest. To Olivia, Harvey had always been the perfect, heroic father. She studied day and night, pushing herself to the limit just to get a single nod of approval from him. But even now, when she needed him most, her hero was nowhere to be found. I held her close and didn't have the heart to tell her that her father had ignored her desperate calls all night. Once Olivia fell back asleep under the sedatives, I quietly left the room and drove to the police station. I didn't care if Harvey believed us or not. I was going to get justice. The detective assigned to the case was incredibly sympathetic. The attacker tried to silence her, and she had to jump from a low balcony to escape them, he explained. When our patrol unit found her, she was badly bruised and disoriented. But she was clutching this necklace so tightly. She kept repeating that she bought it for her dad. She's such a bright, sweet girl. It's a tragedy. But don't worry, we are going to do everything we can to put this monster behind bars. To move the investigation forward, the detective asked me to identify some personal items recovered from the scene. The moment he pulled them out, I lost it. Beneath a pile of torn, stained clothes lay a small, delicate silver necklace. Olivia had worked part-time at a local coffee shop all summer to save up, and buy that for Harvey's birthday last year. But when she proudly presented it to him, he had scoffed, calling it cheap junk, and telling her she was wasting her time instead of focusing on her SATs. Since that day, Olivia had worked twice as hard, determined to get into his alma mater, Harvard. 2 days ago, she received her Harvard acceptance letter. She had been so excited to go to his office to surprise him. Instead, she was dragged into hell. I pressed the cold necklace against my chest. The tears I had been holding back for days finally washed over me. For the next few days, I stayed by her side. With the help of a trauma therapist, she stopped talking about wanting to end her life. She even forced a small smile to comfort me. Dad is a brilliant lawyer, Mom. I have to be strong. I can't make him look bad. But her brilliant lawyer father hadn't visited her once. Olivia didn't say it out loud, but I saw the way she stared at the door. I couldn't stand seeing her heart break. So I called Harvey repeatedly until he finally agreed to stop by. Knowing he was coming, Olivia specifically wore a long-sleeved shirt to cover her bruises. But we waited from sunrise to sunset. When Harvey finally showed up, he looked completely annoyed. He was on his phone, frowning at me as he walked in. My firm just took on a massive federal case. Make this quick. Olivia eagerly reached for her backpack to pull out her Harvard acceptance letter. But before she could, Harvey turned to his young legal assistant, Sienna, who had followed him into the room. Did we secure the CCTV footage of the street yet? Harvey asked her. Time is money. We can't waste a single second. The smile on Olivia's face froze, but she still gathered her courage and spoke up. Dad, I got into Harvard. Harvey didn't even look at her. He just kept discussing his case with Sienna. Don't worry about it too much, Sienna. Since the kid is your relative, I'll handle the defense personally, Harvey said. Besides, I absolutely despise those cheap, trashy girls who party hard and then cry foul when things go wrong. The color completely drained from Olivia's face. She began desperately rubbing her sleeves over her hidden scars, her forced smile looking more painful than a sob. My chest tightened. Just as I was about to step in and shut him down, there was a knock on the door. Sienna checked her phone, looking frantic. Harvey, my cousin, the boy I told you about, is outside. He's terrified. He's just a sweet boy from a small town. He came to the city and got scammed and set up. Please come talk to him. He's so fragile, I'm terrified he might do something reckless to himself. Hearing this, Harvey immediately turned on his heel, completely ignoring Olivia, and walked out the door. I rushed to Olivia's side to comfort her, but before I could touch her, she started shaking violently. Mom. Olivia's teeth chattered. That boy, the one outside with Sienna. He was the one who attacked me. What? I stood up, my blood running hot. But Olivia grabbed my hand with terrifying strength. Even in the middle of summer, her hands felt like ice. Every word she spoke was laced with a deep, paralyzing dread. Why is Dad defending a monster like him? Does Dad hate me that much? Does he not want me to be his daughter anymore? I'm dirty, aren't I? I disappointed him. Dad doesn't want me. No, baby, no. I shook my head, desperately trying to pull her out of her panic attack. But she was completely triggered, repeating the same words like a broken record. Dad doesn't want me. Dad hates me. I had no choice. I ran out into the hallway to catch Harvey and tell him the sickening truth. But when I explained what Olivia had just said, Harvey snatched his hand away with utter disgust. Sarah, do you ever think before you lie? Olivia is my daughter. In this city, with my reputation, who would dare touch her? If she didn't get the grades she wanted and is throwing a fit, she can just tell me. There is absolutely no need to invent a disgusting lie like this just to get my attention. I froze, staring at him in utter disbelief. She is your flesh and blood. You would believe a complete stranger's sob story over your own daughter. Harvey sneered. I am a defense attorney, Sarah. I deal in hard evidence. If she can't produce solid, undeniable proof, then she can stop pretending to be my daughter. I don't raise liars. Dad. A soft, fragile voice came from behind us. Olivia was standing there, swallowed up by her oversized hospital gown. Her trembling hands were still clutching her Harvard acceptance letter. I didn't lie. I really got in. But before she could finish, Harvey's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID, and without a second thought, answered it. His voice instantly softened into a gentle tone. Sienna, hey, calm down. I'm coming right now. I'm here. You don't have to worry about a thing. The last spark of light in Olivia's eyes died. The acceptance letter slipped from her fingers, fluttering down to the dirty hospital floor. She looked like an old, broken woman as she slowly turned back, her shoulders slumped, dragging her feet. I get it now, she whispered to herself. Dad just hates me. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I lunged at Harvey, grabbing his jacket, screaming at him to go back and apologize to our daughter. But he just looked at me with deep annoyance. Sarah, cut the drama, will you? Harvey pulled out his phone and tapped on a video. I already had my investigator check the security cameras around our house. Olivia was inside the house all night. She didn't even step outside. How could she have been attacked if she never left the house? I know you hate how close I am with Sienna, but you don't have to poison our daughter's mind to frame an innocent kid. A high-profile lawyer like him knew damn well that digital video could be edited and forged. Yet Harvey, who prided himself on being objective and meticulous, had lost all his brain cells the moment Sienna was involved. I looked at him, feeling a profound, heavy emptiness. Harvey, when we got married, you swore to me. You said no matter what happened, you would always believe me. You said we would face the world together. Look at you now. What are you doing? Harvey laughed, a sound dripping with contempt. Look at yourself, Sarah. Are you even the same woman I married? You spend all day being paranoid and jealous, and now you've raised our daughter to be a manipulative liar. Olivia was a good girl. She was my absolute pride. Years ago, when Harvey first started his firm, his arrogant attitude pissed off some dangerous people, and he was almost blacklisted from the state bar. I was the one who carried Olivia in my arms, knocking on every partner's door to apologize and beg for him. Back then, Olivia couldn't even speak full sentences. But she would look at those powerful men and babble, "Daddy is good. Please don't hurt Daddy." Her innocent face had bought Harvey a second chance at his career. And now, when she was the one begging for a lifeline, he was stomping on her hand. Whatever, Harvey sighed, looking at my tear-stained face. I know raising her hasn't been easy for you. Go back and tell Olivia that it's fine if her grades aren't perfect, but she needs to keep her morals straight. I don't expect her to take over my firm, but I won't let her make me the laughingstock of the legal community. A top attorney like me cannot have a daughter who lies about being assaulted. No investigation. No forensic tests. Just because of a few words from Sienna, he had declared his own daughter guilty. Before I could even process the pain, my phone buzzed frantically with a dozen notifications. It was the head nurse from the hospital. Sarah, you need to get back to the psychiatric ward right now. Someone just leaked a highly graphic video of Olivia on Snapchat and TikTok. Olivia saw it and is completely hysterical. She's hurting herself. We can't hold her down. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the phone. The video was slightly pixelated, but anyone who knew Olivia could tell it was her. The comment section was filled with disgusting, vile messages from her classmates. OMG, isn't this the quiet girl from AP Lit? She acted so innocent, but look at her go. If I were her, I'd literally jump off a bridge. How embarrassing for her parents. I have the full unblurred link. $5 on Venmo, DM me. Every single word felt like a physical blow to my skull. I forwarded the link to Harvey, my fingers trembling on the screen. Sue the poster. They are destroying Olivia. Do something. This time, Harvey replied instantly. But it was only 2 words. Too busy. Right. I forgot. Harvey was too busy saving the actual rapist. Why would he care if his daughter lived or died? Tears dripped onto my screen, blurring my vision. I quickly called a few of my old friends from college who worked in PR and media, begging them to help me get the videos taken down. Not even 10 minutes later, Harvey called me back, his voice booming with fury. Sarah, why are you telling people that Sienna set Olivia up? Do you have any idea what kind of damage a smear campaign like that does to a young girl's career? Get over to the office and apologize to Sienna right now. Publicly admit you lied. I will not let you ruin Sienna's future. His blind defense of that girl made me lose my mind. I screamed into the phone. What about Olivia's future? What about her life? The boy who did this is Sienna's cousin. You are defending a monster and gaslighting your own daughter. Are you even human, Harvey? Harvey choked on his words for a second. Then he spat out, "You're delusional," and hung up. Back in the room, Olivia was curled under the bed, shaking as she listened to my muffled screams. When I crawled under to hold her, she slowly looked up. Mom, does Dad really hate me? I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect her. But the brutal truth was staring us in the face. I couldn't make excuses for Harvey anymore. The light in Olivia's eyes completely vanished. For the next week, her mental state deteriorated rapidly. She was terrified of every shadow, staying awake for days. But sometimes she would hold my hand and whisper, "I'll stay strong for you, Mom. I'll live." The autumn wind off the river was cold, turning the gray morning mist into long, wet streaks across the tall windows of the pediatric ICU. Inside, the only sound was the rhythmic, soft hum of the humidifier and the occasional, sharp buzz of the heart monitor. Olivia lay under 3 layers of heated blankets, her face still pale, her fingers clutching my hand so tightly. Her knuckles looked like small, white stones. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The phone. "It's ringing. Again." I reached into my bag and pulled out my personal phone. It wasn't a call from the hospital. It was a text notification from my personal attorney Marcus, a sharp, 60-year-old litigator who had spent 3 decades representing the city's most prominent victims of corporate and domestic abuse. Marcus. "Sarah, the forensic team has successfully bypassed the encryption on the regional server. We found the original metadata for the CCTV footage Harvey presented to the police." I stood up, walking to the far corner of the room so my voice wouldn't disturb Olivia. "And," I whispered. "Marcus. It's a complete forgery. The video files were compiled using a template from a security firm registered under Sienna's name. They splice footage from last winter over Tuesday night's feed to show Olivia's room as occupied. The original feed from the neighbor's smart home camera shows the assault in the alley at precisely 11:40 p.m. A slow, cold heat began to rise from the pit of my stomach. "Keep it safe, Marcus," I said, my voice dropping into that quiet, freezing register. "Do not let anyone in the local precinct see it. We are bypassing the county and taking this straight to the state attorney's office." "Understood," Marcus said. "And the divorce filing?" "Submit it," I said. "I'm not asking for the firm. I'm not asking for the townhome. I only want the premarital trusts and the direct custody of Olivia." I hung up, put the phone on silent, and walked back to the bed. I looked at Olivia's face, the face of the brilliant, quiet girl who had spent her entire high school career studying under the yellow light of her desk lamp, just to get a single nod of approval from a father who was currently using his $1 million legal team to protect her rapist. "You're safe now, baby," I whispered, my hand gently wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "Mommy is going to clear the board." At 10 a.m. on Monday, the emergency board meeting of Vance and Partners was called to order. The atmosphere in the boardroom was icy. The 6 senior partners, men who had been Harvey's peers for 20 years, were sitting in silence, their eyes fixed on the financial terminals in front of them. Harvey sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his tie slightly loose, his face sallow and tired from 48 hours of media crisis management. "It's a minor PR issue," Harvey said, his voice carrying that flat, authoritative cadence he used when he was trying to reassure a difficult corporate client. "The local blogs are trying to sensationalize a domestic dispute. Once the M&A deal with the Northern Port is finalized next week, the stock price will stabilize." "It's not a domestic dispute, Harvey," the senior partner, an older man named Mr. Harrison, said, his voice carrying a dry, heavy authority. He slid a blue folder across the polished wood toward Harvey. "The state attorney's office just issued a warrant for the arrest of Arthur Cole, Sienna's cousin. They've bypassed our local contacts. The charges are first-degree kidnapping, sexual assault, and electronic dissemination of non-consensual media." "They can't do that," Sienna shrieked, her voice losing all its sweet, fragile polish as she stood up from her seat near the door. Her hands were shaking so violently she dropped her tablet. "Harvey, you said you had the CCTV footage. You said she was a liar." "Quiet, Sienna," Harvey snapped, his face turning an ugly, mottled gray as he looked at the document in his hand. "And there's more, Harvey," Mr. Harrison said, his voice dropping into a register that made the plaster walls of the room seem cold. "The state forensic lab has completed their audit of the security footage you presented to the precinct. They've verified it was forged. They're filing a formal complaint with the State Bar Association for intentional tampering with evidence." He stood up, looking down at his old partner. "The board has voted to suspend your partnership, effective immediately. Your name will be removed from the firm's registration by noon." The criminal trial of Arthur Cole was held in the High Court of the State of California. The courtroom was crowded with reporters, corporate representatives, and curious legal onlookers. It was the biggest case of the year, a classic high-profile tragedy of a family destroyed by greed and a faked identity. Sienna Cole sat at the defense table, her hair unwashed and wild, her face pale as paper. She was wearing a simple gray prison uniform, her hands cuffed, her eyes vacant as she stared at the floor. Beside her, the seat of the defense attorney was empty. Harvey Vance was no longer her lawyer. He was sitting in the public gallery, dressed in a cheap, wrinkled suit, his license permanently revoked, his name dragged through the mud of every legal journal in the country. "The evidence is indisputable, Your Honor," the prosecutor said, displaying the digital logs from Olivia's phone and the toxicology report from the clinic. The Defendant faked her amnesia to escape justice for the assault of Olivia Vance. And with the cooperation of Harvey Vance and Sienna Cole, she systematically harassed and coerced the primary witness until the witness was driven to suicide. In the first life. He looked at Sienna, his eyes cold as steel. We are asking for the maximum sentence. Life without the possibility of parole. The judge didn't hesitate. He raised his wooden gavel and slammed it down with a sharp final clack. Motion approved. The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment. As the bailiffs led her out through the side door, her hands clutched against her chest, she didn't look at Arthur. She didn't look at Harvey. She looked at the empty seat at the plaintiff's table, the seat where I should have been sitting, dressed in my best suit, watching her finally pay the price of her choices. But there was no one there. Only the cold draft of the air conditioner, blowing a few dry leaves across the polished wood of the table. The house on the hill was quiet when Harvey returned in the evening. The front door had been left unlocked, just as I had left it. He had returned from the hotel room at 8 a.m., his suit jacket wrinkled, his face sallow and tired from sitting up all night in the wooden chair beside Sienna's bed. He had been preparing his lecture, the one he always gave me about boundaries, professional responsibility, and how my childish jealousy was ruining his career. But the speech died in his throat. The apartment was vast, empty, and silent. The master bedroom wardrobe was wide open. My side, the side that had been filled with my simple cotton shirts, my books, and the row of leather boots he had always complained took up too much space, was completely bare. Even the small ceramic tray on the nightstand where he used to leave his watch was gone. On the kitchen island, a single silver key was resting on a clean white sheet of paper. It was the key to the apartment. Beside it sat a copy of my signed lease relinquishment form and a brief, printed note from my attorney. The joint lease is terminated. The security deposit has been divided equally. Please do not contact the tenant regarding any personal or administrative matters from this date forward. Harvey's hand shook as he picked up the key. He pulled out his phone and dialed my number. The number you have dialed is currently unavailable. Please check the number and try again. He dialed my mother's number. The subscriber you are trying to reach has restricted incoming calls from this area code. A slow, cold sweat broke out across his temples. He looked at the white sheets of the master bed, which had been stripped bare, the mattress cover gray and cold under the fluorescent ceiling light. For 5 years he had believed my devotion was a permanent domestic feature, something stable and quiet that would always be waiting for him when he returned from his business trips and his late-night consultations. He had treated my quiet, uncomplaining compromise as a sign of weakness, assuming that because I didn't scream, I would never run. But the silence in the apartment now was not the silence of a woman waiting for him to apologize. It was the silence of a house that had been cleared of its furniture after a foreclosure. The park near the Harvard campus was quietest at 5 p.m. The afternoon sun cast long, golden-red shadows across the gravel paths, and the sound of the river water flowing over the stone weirs was a soothing white noise that seemed to empty my mind of the day's laboratory data. I was sitting on a wooden bench under a large blooming chestnut tree, a book on system biology open on my lap. A shadow fell over my pages. I didn't look up immediately, assuming it was another researcher from the institute. But the shadow remained still, blocking the warm light of the evening sun. Sarah, a voice said. It was a man's voice, high, thin, and carrying a sharp, desperate vibration that sounded entirely out of place in the quiet garden. I slowly lifted my head. He was dressed in a simple, off-the-rack gray coat that looked slightly loose on his thin frame, his hair completely white at the temples, his hands shaking in his pockets. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, surrounded by deep, dark circles of exhaustion. He looked like a man who had spent 36 hours sitting in the economy cabin of a budget flight without sleep. Hello, I said, my voice carrying the polite, distant neutrality of a stranger. Are you looking for the main administrative office? It's just past the glass gate. The man froze, his mouth slightly open, his fingers clutching his small leather purse so tightly his knuckles were a dry, papery yellow. Sarah, he whispered, taking a small, hesitant step toward the bench. His eyes searched my face, looking for any hint of pain, any flicker of recognition, and finding only the calm, intellectual curiosity of a scientist looking at a specimen. It's me. It's Harvey. I brought the papers. The divorce papers. I had them annulled by the regional court last week. We're still married. Sarah, look. She pulled a creased blue folder from her bag, her hands shaking so violently. She dropped several loose sheets onto the gravel path. I looked at the papers lying in the dirt, then back at his face. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance, I said, offering him a mild, apologetic smile as I stood up. But I think you have mistaken me for someone else. My name is Sarah Smith. I am the senior research director for the neurobiology department. No. No, you're Sarah. My Sarah, he shrieked, his composure completely shattering as he lunged forward, his fingers clawing at the sleeve of my charcoal suit. You're my wife. You designed the suit, Sarah. You wore it at our wedding. You said you loved me. You said you'd wait for me to come back. I gently but firmly pulled my arm out of his grasp, taking a step back onto the grass. The physical contact felt cold, dry, and entirely devoid of the warmth that usually exists between two human beings. I developed litigation, Mr. Vance, I said, my voice quiet as the spring wind through the chestnut leaves. If you are the primary subject of my historical attachment, then you must understand the clinical reality of the compound. The neural pathway inhibition is complete. The memory of loving you does not exist in my brain. But I love you, she sobbed, dropping to her knees on the gravel, her hands clutching the hem of my trousers, her face buried in her hands as she began to weep, not the soft, dramatic tears she had used to soothe Wilson, but a loud, choking rattle of pure, raw grief. Sarah, please. I was stupid. I thought you'd wait. I thought the antidote was real. Wilson was a lie. He didn't have cancer. He just wanted the money. Please, just look at me. Try to remember, please. I looked down at her kneeling in the dirt, her expensive gray coat stained with the mud of the path. I felt no hatred. I felt no urge to laugh at her misery. I felt only a profound, hollow pity for a stranger who had traveled 3,000 miles to find a grave that had already been cleared of its markers. I cannot help you, Mr. Vance, I said softly, picking up my book from the bench. Because to remember you, I would first have to care about what I lost. And right now, I have a lecture to prepare for. I turned on my heel and walked away, the sound of my shoes clicking a slow, steady rhythm on the gravel as her dry, ragged sobbing faded into the hum of the city traffic outside. The twilight in Boston was long, the sky turning a deep, royal blue that cast a soft, serene light over the old stone buildings of the University Square. I sat in my cozy, sunlit study on the 4th floor of my new apartment block, a cup of hot chamomile tea on the wooden desk, my laptop open to a fresh research outline. On the wall near the window hung my first patent certificate, a pristine, silver-framed document displaying the structural formula of litigation. A quiet knock sounded on the glass door. Sarah. I looked up. My colleague, a tall, quiet biochemist named Clara who had worked beside me for 3 months in the lab, was standing in the doorway, holding 2 plates of fresh, hot apple strudel. The library director said the software demonstration has been rescheduled for tomorrow morning, Clara smiled, walking over to set a plate next to my hand. Are you ready? Yes, I said, rising from my desk. I walked over to the mirror near the door, adjusting the collar of my shirt. My skin looked bright, my eyes clear of the permanent, gray exhaustion that had defined my final days in the hometown. I looked out the window at the distant mountains, where the first yellow lights of the alpine villages were starting to glow in the dark. I closed my laptop, took a sip of my warm tea, and let the clean, cold wind off. The river carried the last dry leaves of the past away into the endlessly beautiful horizon ahead.